Hi, and welcome to our Prairie Rose session about Codingville.ca, our coding platform. We are going to jump right in and just get going with this because we want this to be a nice quick session for those of you that are with us today and watching later on. So at the end of all of this, if you need a refresher, you can rewatch this video or the bit.ly at the bottom of the screen, bit.ly.codingville setup is a video I have done previously that will also take you through these steps if you need a refresher. And there's that video again. Okay, so Codingville.ca is the program that we're going to look at today. It's a coding platform that's been around for a while. In Prairie Rose, we've largely been using the Google program called CS First, and that's not available anymore. And so Codingville is a good replacement. One of the things I like about Codingville is it is a Canadian platform. It's sponsored with funding from Code Canada. And so it does, never hurts to support a Canadian program. So we're going to spend a few minutes talking about what is Codingville, how might it be similar or different to other coding programs you've used. We're going to go through how to create a teacher account, and then look at some of the elements inside, what some of its features are. We're going to look at how to create a classroom and then how to add student activities. For the most part, students can't work in Codingville unless you have them added as students and unless you add activities for them to do. And we'll go through, if we have time, hopefully, and go through some steps of what student activities look like. So that's what we are going to do for today. So first of all, Codingville is a pretty interesting platform. It's got a couple different things going on. The main part of it is game-based. So students go on these things called journeys or missions, and basically they get a mission that they have to code, and they do the coding, and then they press, basically run or submit. The code runs. If they've got it correct, it says, yay, congratulations, and it automatically moves you on to the next level. If you didn't get the code right, then you can get a hint, or you can try again. And then once you improve the code and get it right, then you can keep moving on. And so that's how you learn to code in Codingville. It kind of builds on itself. The other thing that I really like about Codingville is that it starts off in block coding, and that's mostly what we'll be doing today. But then it goes on to block to text, so Java or HTML language, and that's often the spot typically in junior high where we get stuck for moving from block coding, like we might be familiar with in Scratch, to go over to a text-based coding. And so Codingville has this nice platform, or this nice journey where you see the blocks and the text side by side, and it helps students make that transition. So there are those self-paced step-by-step journeys, and also some things called skill builders. But then it also has a game proponent, which is more like we would be familiar with in Scratch, where it's kind of that free play, you do whatever you want. And then an app builder, which is actually quite advanced. And so we won't go anywhere near the app builder today, but if you were using Codingville with older students, there's some great possibilities there. And really, I've used Codingville as young as about grade 2. You could do probably even a little bit younger. They say K and 1. You could do some. Actually, they also have we're going to look at their Coding Unplugged. So if you look at all the unplugged lessons, then absolutely, Codingville is a great place to start to get ideas for unplugged activities for coding. And they have a robust teacher resource part as well. So for students, it's fun and easy to use. They can share their projects. So if they create a game, you can actually get a link and share it with other people, and they can, try out different things. So it's got some very step-by-step parts that are great for helping students move along without necessarily the teacher being an expert. But then there's also some parts where they can really do some problem-solving, free play kind of coding. All right, now teachers, there are a whole bunch of ways that you can support your students and also develop your own skills. This dashboard that you see at the right here, these are the journeys and the skills practice. You can do those yourself, of course, but this is what we assign to students. There's a teacher dashboard where you can track students' progress. I think I have a picture of that. And along the way, you will build your own skills and experiences. And there are some direct teacher parts where you can actually do a mini lesson on your own if you want to. And if you're coding in Codingville, if you take a look at the coding that's inside of our K-9 or K-6 new science curriculum, if you just even spend an hour or two in Codingville with your kids, you've probably blown by most of the requirements in the computer science section of our science curriculum. So here we see a close-up of the teacher dashboard. The green button is where we would assign. And then there's also this info button, which gives us a little bit of information about what's behind here. And this is also where we'll go to try out and do a teacher sample. So if you aren't sure if this is the right thing to assign, you can go in there and you can try out the different parts and say, oh, this is too hard for my kids, or this is just right. So you can go ahead that way. So we're going to jump in and walk through how to get your account. So the very first thing that you will do is you will go in a new tab to Codingville.ca. And the first time that you do it, you will click sign up. When you do that, you will look for in your email a confirmation email that you basically click the link to say, yeah, I'm looking for a Codingville account. Now, sometimes that gets stuck in a spam or in other folder, junk folder, so do be sure to check there. It usually happens pretty quickly. So if you are able to let me know in the chat if that's come through and you're able to get into your account, let me know. I'd love to know when you're kind of ready to go there. I'm going to keep going and looking at the next steps, because for some of you that email will come really quickly. Once you've clicked on the confirmation email, you'll make a username and password. Now, you might at this point get a Google login. That's just new to Codingville, and I have it on some of my screenshots. I see I forgot to put it on this one. I'm going to suggest at this point that we don't use the Google login. I was quite excited when it came, but there's been some trouble with it. So I don't know if the trouble is on our end or the Codingville end. So at this point, what I would suggest is you can use your email, your Prairie Rose email, but then just set your own password. So if there's the Google login there, I haven't had success in our district making that work with students or teachers. So you're welcome to try it. But I know that the username and password works for sure. So once you do that, you're going to come back in and you're going to log in with those new credentials. So first time you hit sign up, you get the confirmation email, you make your username and password, and then you come back and you hit login and you enter that new username and password. You're going to get this little safety badge. It talks about the terms of use. You can take a look at all of those. And there's a little get starting video. You're welcome to watch that, although I'll have gone over lots of that with you. So you can let me know in the chat if you have made an account successfully. And if you're watching video here, just pause and get your account all sorted and then come back and we'll keep going. So now you're logged in as a teacher. And what I'm going to have you do is on the left-hand side, you've got that black bar. That's really your dashboard or your menu bar. So we're going to click on the green, the one that I have in green here that's called Classrooms, and you'll get a screen that looks like this. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to click on Create Classroom. When you click on Create Classroom, you will get a place for the name. You'll be asked to choose the grade. Now, lots of you have multi-grade classrooms. I usually just aim for the grade that's about in the middle. That's fine. And then if you have a little button that says, do you want AI turned on or off? I would ask that you say on. And here's why. The AI inside of Codingville it's not actually generative AI. It's very safe. What it does is allows you to use the AI components, and the AI components are basically camera and voice recognition. And so the voice recognition, we're gonna create games where we're programming the AI to recognize voice. And then there's also some camera AI games where the AI is using objects, it's recognizing objects to create some game moves. There's another one where it also does face emotion recognition. And you don't have to use the student's face if you don't want to. Codingville has provided a bunch of different faces of people with different emotions, but you still need to use the camera to show the pictures too. So do allow the AI, because that's where lots of the fun is. So you're going to create your class name, and then you're going to click over. So along the top, we're going to click then on the Students tab, and you can see I've got that underlined in green. When you click on the Students tab, if you have any existing students, they're going to appear in the list. I have 3 in this particular screenshot. And then you're going to click on the plus students. And then we're going to look at some different ways that you can add students and talk about some pros and cons of each of them. The first one is share class code. That's probably the easiest in the short term, but the most unpredictable in the long term. So if you share class code, you would get a link. You could put that in your Google Classroom for kids to click on, or you could write that class code on the board, and when they go to log in, there's a little pop-up that says, do you have a class code? They'll say yes. They would type that in. So that is very easy to do. However, the tricky part with that is that then you have to trust the students to create their own username and their own password and then remember them. So if they're using the sign up with class code, you should have a piece of paper and a pencil that you're passing around or going around to collect all those, or give the kids a little slip of paper to write down their username and password that they give to you so that you can collect those, because there's not a great forgot password feature here. So you want to make sure that you have access to that. If we have small classes, what I usually do is just do the add single student. Put the student, it says full name, but you can just do first name, last initial is fine. But the username must be one of a kind. So I have a pretty unique first name. There's probably no other Cami K's in Canada spelt the way I am. I'm actually fairly, well, maybe not many of us, but there's probably lots of Laura S's or Craig, or like different names. Those exist, and so what I would recommend is that you might do something like PMAS Laura S, or WMS _ Eli M, or something like that, so that there's that school bit will be enough of a uniqueness that you could then have your student's first name, last initial. The reason you'd want the first name, last initial instead of kids picking like Bugs Bunny and Big Bird is that you will want to be able to identify who they are. And so then if you have their first name and last initial, then you also know who they are and the system will recognize them. So all of that. The other thing that you can do is you can also upload with a CSV. If you click on that file, it gives you a template, and I've got a little screenshot of it down here. Oopsie, I went to the next slide by accident. Let's go back. There we go. Oh, I went a couple slides. There we go. So that CSV has a couple columns. You can type or copy and paste the information in there and then just upload that. So either one of those, you probably have to do some typing either way. And that is how you create your class. So it doesn't take very long, 5 minutes usually to get all that information, and you can have your class in there. So first way with the student code is quickest, but then you somehow have to try to get the username and password for the kids. The other thing is if you have that the students in ahead of time, then when it comes time to join Codingville from the student's end, you pass out the username or the password, or you write down whatever the algorithm is, or your the way that you've made it, and they log in, and then you're ready to go right away. This is just a look at what it looks like from the class code. when the students get in, it'll ask if they have a class code. If they say yes, then that's how you would do. If you aren't using the class code, you'll say no, or they'll say no, and then it'll go right to prompt them to add their username and password, which you have already done. Now, we're going to come back as students. So that's the teacher setup. The teacher needs to create the students ahead of time. We'll also go look at a step in a little bit where we're going to assign some work. But now we're going to look at how to set up students. So now we're in student mode. Students come to Codingville.ca just like the teacher did. And they're going to click sign up if they're using a class code. Otherwise, they can click login, choose I'm a student, and then they will have on the left-hand side there, if you've already made a username and password, they can enter that. You can see there I have that sign in with Google, which is new, but it's been a little inconsistent. So lots of times when I help schools all over the country get set up in Codingville, some are successful and some aren't. And I don't know that our Prairie Rose has been connected to allow Codingville yet. So I would just use username and password at this point. On the right-hand side, if you were using the code, this would be what the students would do if they were, if you gave them the class code, this would be the information that they needed to put in. Again, I would say that that's probably not my first recommendation, just because then it's important that you kind of get that information, their login information somehow. Now, the important thing here is it might ask at some point for a student email. You never have to give Codingville a student email. First and last initial is all that you would ever have to give Codingville. And even then, that could be made up if you chose to. I don't know that you should, because then you can't necessarily keep track of your students. But then the thing I want you to know about Codingville is that it's very safe. They don't need a student email, which is why they can't do a password reset. It does give you the option to add student email, but I would recommend that you don't need to do that. So student comes in, if you've given them a username and password, they're going to click log in and add that. And then they'll get that same, I agree, the little let's get started video. And then from there, they're going to have a blank page. So basically, their account is empty unless the teacher has added some things to do. And so we're going to see right here, this is an empty student account. We as the teacher need to go and assign them some things to do. So you've got your teacher account. You've created student accounts. Students have logged in. Let's take a look at another step for the teachers. Teachers, once you know you have to do this, you can do this as soon as you make the account and add the students. You can do this next step right away. Let's take a look at some of the content inside of Codingville. So we have journeys, and then we have what are called skills practices. So this is where we're going to have do a lot of the student work inside of Codingville. So on the previous picture here, we're in the journeys, and there are 5 different journeys. Now, you'll notice at the top, it says coding using blocks. It says 9 hours, and then it says beginners K-3. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think that grade 3 is a great starting spot. You could go grade 2, but I would absolutely use this first journey in 4 to 6, 100%. And I would even start there with grade 7, 8, 9, especially if they haven't done much coding. If your students have done a ton of coding before, that's different. But if your students are mostly new to coding, I would start in the block coding for most grades. Okay, so then you would click assign. The Discover Canada one in the middle, where you kind of have that little green robot flying over, that's actually a drone. That one is very different. It's a separate AI. It's actually a brand new journey that they have. It's AI Labs, and we're going to talk about that at some point. I wouldn't probably start there if your intent is to learn coding, but if your intent is to get some AI awareness, you could start there. The other next block is, it says from blocks to JavaScript. It says intermediate from 4 to 6. I would not start your grade 4 to 6 students there if they're newer to coding. I would start them in the coding using blocks and then move there. And if I was in grade 7 and 8, I would start my junior high kids. They could absolutely do this. You might start in the coding using blocks, but you could start them here as well. The two on the bottom, coding using JavaScript, that is 100%, no block coding. So if you want your kids to learn how to code with Java and they're ready for that, that's where you would start. And then the junior app development is actually quite challenging. So I wouldn't recommend the junior app development journey until students have had quite a bit of practice in other areas of Codingville. Now, journeys are long. They take a long time. The students must progress kind of mission by mission and step by step by step. They can't jump ahead and they can't go to the next one until they've fully completed the one that they're on. Sometimes they start off fairly easy, but the rate of complication increases in some of them quite quickly. And so there are some ones that get pretty difficult. And so just because it looks easy to start, don't think that it's going to stay that way. And I'll show you how you can take a look at checking those out. The journeys overall are quite long. And so if you wanted to maybe get into some coding concepts a little more quickly or a little more specifically, you could click on, there's another tab there that says skills practice. And so we're still under the journeys, but now we're at skills practice. And so we have movement, sensors, and then you see loops and conditionals and if-then statements. And so you can see some really specific coding skills and concepts. And each of these skill sets dig into those specifically. If you click the little, let's go into here. If you click the little item at the bottom, and mine today says pre-journeys. Do you know, it goes back and forth. Some days it seems to say pre-journeys, that's new. And then the next day I come back and it still says skills practice. So today it says pre-journeys. If I click at the bottom here, number 2, to go to the second page or the arrow, then I get, just my screen size here so it fits more on, I get some other skills practice. And these ones that look like a green floating island, getting ready to garden, I can take care of garden in the harvest. Those are kind of some mini journeys that combine a bunch of coding skills, whereas these other tiles are quite specific to a certain skill. Let's take a look at one of these and see what happens here. So I'm going to click into this very first one called Robo Movement. Now this is the easiest of the easy. This is probably as easy as the games, not the games, as the skills practice, or that asynchronous self-paced learning gets. This block right here, this Robo Movement, is the easiest. We're going to go in there and poke around and we'll get a sense for how Codingville works at the very, very lowest level. So what we're going to see is very easy, but there's not a ton of that level inside of Codingville. So as a teacher, if you were going to assign this to students, you'd click assign, and then it asks you to choose your class, and you would pick your class, and then it would show up in the student dashboard. But as a teacher, if you want to see, hey, what does this look like? How hard is the coding? What you're going to do is you're going to click on info. Okay, so what it does there, it says, simple movements, familiarize ourselves with the game. Now, the teachers can click try. So this is where I spend a lot of my time. Now, when you push this out to the students, they will be forced to go in order. So hang the banner, decorate the house. They go from item to item to item, and it just pushes them to the next. They never get back to this page really where they get to choose. However, as a teacher, we can jump around here and take a look at what's inside of each of those. So I'm going to click on the very first one. We're going to walk into the Codingville self-paced world, and I'll go through a couple of these just so you get a sense of kind of the progression and how things work inside. Okay, take a listen. The lady's going to tell us what to do. So if you have younger learners, the lady will tell us what to do. I'm going to turn the sound
Move
on.
one step forward to collect the birthday banner.
Okay, so our task, move a step forward. Now I'm going to hit continue. Now you'll see here, this is kind of our little coding space, this 10 by 10 grid. And right here in the bottom left, this little guy is Robo, and he's going to be our character. We call it a sprite in coding often all throughout Codingville. And this is super, super simple. The left-hand side of the screen, if you're used to any kind of block-based coding, like in Scratch, for example, or Hour of Code, this is where our code sits. To start, we only have one option. So we're going to click out a move forward block. I'm going to click run. Robo does the thing. Congratulations. Next mission. It pushes me right into the next one. Decorate the house with balloons. Take a step backward. Again, on the left-hand side, I open the block tray. Very simple. There's not a lot to choose from. Step backward. Run. Okay, so you're thinking, Cami, this is way too easy for my students. This part starts very slow. However, it will ramp up for us quite quickly. So move to the right to get your first biscuit. I'm going to hit continue. And now we see we have two choices. So first I'm going to rotate right. And we're going to hit click step forward. Now, listen to the click. Those blocks click into place. And I'm going to click run. Robo does the thing. Go to the next mission. Okay. Again, this is super simple, but it's not going to stay this way. Now, basically, we're going to we could turn left and step forward. What I want to show you here, and I would probably absolutely model this with students before I had them do it on their own. What I like to do at this point is I like to say, okay, is there another way that we could do this, especially when it's so simple? So I'm going to take out my block, but instead of having Robo turn left and step forward, I wonder if we could have him turn right again and step backward. So let's see what happens. I'm going to click run. And sure enough, he did that. So if I was looking for the best answer, the model answer, it probably wouldn't be that. But usually we want to teach kids that there's often many, many ways to code, but there's usually a way that is more efficient. So sometimes our code might be more complex or longer than it needs to. We always want to work students toward the most simplified and direct coding. Okay, so this next one, now all of a sudden you can see there's quite a jump. We've got to help Robo collect a cupcake, and the length of a cell is 20, the nearest cupcake. So now we're looking at some skip counting by 20. So 20, 40, 60. Now you might come in here and you say, oh my goodness, what is this? Like move distance, where is the step forward block? I don't know what to do. So as a teacher, this is in the teacher mode under the settings cog. So top right-hand corner, the settings code has a magic teacher button called show model answer. And so I can see right here, move the distance of 60. So if I was going to remake that, I'd put move distance. And then I need this guy here. Actually, I don't need that one. I just need the orange one. Drag that in there, and I'm going to change that to, I'm going to actually put 50 in so we can see what happens if it's incorrect. So I'm going to move this out of the way, make this a little bigger. Oh, I lost my run button. Okay, so I'm going to hit run, and now let's see what happens if we don't quite get it. Okay, so if we have incorrect code, it says, uh-oh, try the hint to help you. So when our code isn't correct or student code isn't correct, we can click on hint, and then it says you might need to reorder the blocks or you might need to modify the inputs. Now, this one's a little bit vague. Sometimes it's quite specific. It'll say you need more step forward blocks or you need a turn right block. In this case, we know we're going to go back to retry, and I'm going to go, oh, 20, 40, 60. I have the wrong number. Put 60 in here. Run. And then next mission. And here, now this one you can see already, the students have to get the wafer, which is this little candy here, and then the biscuit. And it actually asks them to do it with as few blocks as possible. So this is a neat question because I have to go forward and then maybe turn and go back. Eventually we want the students, like, do you go in a square or do you go up and turn around and go backwards, and then left and turn around and go backwards, or turn around and go forward? So there's lots of different ways to do this one. After students have worked on it a little bit, I love to show them the model answer, or maybe even help them come to the model answer, where they're actually beginning to add negative numbers. So if you have the littlest learners, they're not going to get that. They don't know anything about negative numbers yet. We can do this. We can solve this coding without the negative numbers if they're not ready for that. We do not have to use the model answer, but we can, as a teacher, you can always pull that out and even have the kids copy that onto theirs. I like to do this first little bit together, step by step. So we just went through robo movement. You could see the first 4 were so easy. The 5th was a little harder, and that 6th one actually had a lot of jump in it. So that was robo movement under the skills practice. That is by far the easiest one. Some of these other ones, even though they say beginner K to 3, they are more challenging. So let's look at this if else one, for example. So I'm going to click on the try, and I'm going to show the 1, 2, 3, the third one. And I'm going to go model answer just so you can see what we kind of get to. Oopsie. So you can see right here that, oh, I lost it by accident. Show model answer. We've got step forward, we've got some if and then. So our code has actually become quite, this is, fairly complex code. A brand new grade 2 student isn't going to get this on their own. You can work through it with as a class, kind of a I do, you do would be how I would do this with young learners. But my point is the My Robo movement one that we did, very simple. Then it starts to build after that. So that is kind of what it looks like inside of the actual coding and the journeys. So we're just going to take a look at a few other things here. We talked about the teacher dashboard, the show model answer, excellent. Codingville is excellent at coding and computational thinking. And so computational thinking is a key component in our science curriculum. Sequences, loops, conditionals, lots of those terms come into our grade 5 and 6 curriculum in Alberta, and even goes beyond. So lots of coding concepts here. And the other thing I want to draw your attention to are the teacher resources. So there's a teacher resource tab. Let's just go on the live side over here, teacher resource tab. And so these are all sorts of, if I just click on sequences, you can see this is a little bit of information with videos, so I can learn about sequences. I can come down here to next, and then it's going to give me a question, like a little quiz, which I didn't read the first piece, so I can't answer that. I could have just guessed, I guess. And then there's some unplugged activities in practice. So again, here's what this could look like in your class. Unplugged means no computers. So if you are wanting to teach computational thinking, you do not need computers whatsoever. And these little learning modules take you through exactly great ways to do that. And then down at the bottom here, all of these would link you to, let's see, if I click on one of these, it'll take us into the part in Codingville where we would practice that step. And so that is a neat way to go about that for the teacher. Okay, I'm going to go back here. So that's teacher resources. So you can see there's lots of different things to work through there. Lesson plans. These are mostly unplugged again. So history of computers, programming puzzles, math coders, identifying loops, loops in nature. Let's just open up, or actually I should have just clicked view instead of download, but there's the download. So you can see they have these nice lesson plans. It has the time, all the teacher materials that you'll need, hook, explore, the amount of time. This one's a little bit longer. It talks about 2 or 3 days. Can probably modify extensions, evaluate. So lots and lots of teacher material, even if you weren't necessarily looking to code with computers. And we talked about those paper-based non-digital pieces. Robo Picasso, this is a classic one where you actually give the students some instructions to draw something, and we talk about that's sequences. This is how computers use sequences. It's kind of like when you do, when you do the old peanut butter, make a peanut butter sandwich or a jam sandwich, and you got the jar and the knife and the peanut butter, and you say, okay, kids, give me an instruction. And they say, okay, put the peanut butter on the bread. And so you take the jar of peanut butter, you squish it on the loaf of bread, right? All those kinds of things. How do we get specific steps? Lots of great activities like that to go through. So there's the butterfly that the teacher's instructions, if the kids followed the steps, it could look like that. Simon Says is another one. So those are some of the teacher examples. So that is a quick overview of how to use Codingville. There are also leaderboards for the students, and let's see if I go into one of my classrooms. I should, where are my leaderboards? When you have a class, I guess I don't have students connected there, but there are leaderboards. I got a certificate as a teacher for completing some of the training modules, and we looked at the teacher resources. The kids have a block that says badges, and so as they play, you can see here's one of my test students. This student has got some badges, so I can see what they've done, and this student has made a bunch of projects already. The last thing I'm going to show you is we spent most of our time in journeys. This is the self-paced, self-guided. Now, what I would recommend that in Codingville, at least for the first couple times, that you don't just say, here you go, code. I would use the model answers, take a picture on my phone if I needed to, and work through with the students the first couple times, and then maybe let them try, the next step if they got finished. But to keep the kids learning instead of just clicking buttons and getting frustrated, it is, I think, a great way to work through Codingville, even though it is self-paced, is to work kind of through together as a class. And I'm realizing that I didn't have a dashboard in this deck to show you. Where's my dashboard? Huh. Nope. I usually have a dashboard. So basically you can see all the students, you can see how far they've gotten. The green check, they did this mission, red check, they didn't do that one. So I usually have a screenshot of that, of a class that's finished, so that we can see along the way how they've done. That would be important to show you. The very last thing is the projects. And the projects, I'm going to click in the top corner here. When you click on create, students can do this without the teacher. However, this is a really it's like putting students loose in an open field and saying, build a house. They need some help and support to do this. So I'm going to click on the create game. So you get in here and this is all there is. And so students should have some guidance for this game part, and they can create lots of games. And I'll just go back to my projects here. So you can see over time, I've created lots and lots of different games in here. Basically, the robo goes and he collects coins and he maybe has to beat the timer and there's some damage and then he has game over. So their games are fairly simple, but they are fun, and we do get to practice lots of those coding concepts. If your students are ready for projects, that's a great time to have me in to kind of teach them how to play the games. In the journey section, I'm just going to click actually into a journey over here under the info tab, try. At the end of their journey, there is a build your own game tutorial. So if they've gotten through all the journeys, then they get to the journey step-by-step game builder, which has some built-in steps. Once they've done that, then they could go back to that empty field project section and they would know what to do. I also want to point out this little AI guy right here. This is brand new to Codingville. Students can get there and create an AI game, but again, this one does have some reading instructions that you can go through. These game parts would be a great place to have me in and do a quick tutorial with your class. We spend a class together, I get them started, and then they'll be off to the races. With lots of classes across Prairie Rose already, I have come in and we've started in the journeys, and I've kind of modeled a nice pacing and a nice way to get through Codingville, or how to get your teacher, how to engage your students in a way that is helpful for them to learn the code, not just necessarily click the buttons and do the things. And so I'm happy to come in and do a session or two with your class. Maybe we do a beginner one, and then after they've done an extra couple days, I'll come back in and we can learn how to build games. So if you're interested in that, that would be great, a great way to do some coding together. So if you have any questions about Codingville, contact me, and I would love to help you out with that.